During the trip, Ryan and I were giving each other the silent treatment. When the train pulled into the station, he got off first without waiting for me. By the time a conductor shook me awake, we had already passed the stop. I wasn't as upset as I'd imagined. I calmly bought a new ticket. So this was how goodbyes happened, quietly, without a sound. Chapter 1. You didn't get off? I fell asleep. 3 dots appeared on the screen. Then he sent a location. A hotel. I'll wait for you. Can you make it by 9? I checked the time. 2 hours left. If I got off at the next station and doubled back, I'd make it. Outside the window, vast fields rolled by, waves of gold rippling under the early morning light. It was rare for me to feel attached to a view like that. Don't wait. Let's break up, I texted. The typing indicator blinked on and off for a long time. Finally, a single reply came through. Suit yourself. No argument. No drama. Just like that, our 6-year relationship ended. Chapter 2. The woman sitting beside me noticed my pale face and poured me a cup of warm water. Did you and your boyfriend have a fight, sweetheart? I took it with a smile and shook my head. I'd known Ryan since I was 17, and I had never seen him lose his temper with anyone. The first time I met him was at a school New Year's event in our sophomore year. The male host who was supposed to partner with me bailed at the last minute because his girlfriend got jealous, so Ryan was pushed in to fill the spot. His black hair brushed just past his brows, his nose sharp and straight, his lips pale pink beneath a slightly upturned tip. He looked like he'd stepped straight out of a graphic novel. Maybe it was the charged atmosphere, but all I remember is how fast my heart was pounding. After that, I started finding excuses to be around him. Wherever he was, I made sure I showed up. Before morning classes, I'd rush over with toast in my mouth, sweating, and shove a hot breakfast sandwich and milk into the space under his desk before sprinting back to my own classroom just in time. When he subbed out during games, I'd cut through the crowd like an arrow, racing straight to him and handing him the water I'd been clutching in my jacket. His distant eyes carried the faintest hint of a smile. Why do I see you everywhere? I tilted my chin up, not bothering to hide how much I liked him. Because I like you. You should get used to it. He let out a low chuckle, took the bottle from my hand, and tipped his head back to drink. Water slipped from the corner of his mouth, tracing down his jaw and over the movement of his throat. I don't like you, he said calmly. You should take the hint. If you don't believe me, go ahead and try chasing me. I bet your patience won't last a month. I stared at his damp, pink lips and made a silent vow. Those soft, glossy lips, I was definitely, absolutely going to kiss them one day. I narrowed my eyes and smiled, certain of myself. We'll see. You're going to lose. My friends told me not to waste my time. Ryan was the kind of guy who had always been at the top, proud, untouchable, his heart colder than ice. But once I set my mind on something, nothing could drag me away. Back then, I naively believed I'd be the exception. The one who could make him lose control. Girls chased after Ryan nonstop, but I was the only one who never gave up. I balanced pursuing him with my studies and somehow managed to get into the same college he attended, even though I'd barely scraped by academically. At the freshman orientation, I swapped my thick glasses for contacts, put on the trendiest makeup I could manage, and waited for him along the campus walkway in a pale yellow sundress. He, who usually showed no interest in anyone, paused in surprise. When he spoke, there was a teasing edge in his voice. Wow. You really don't know when to quit. Not long after that day, he agreed to date me. His easy acceptance felt unreal for a moment. Later, when I waited for him after class so we could grab dinner, I finally understood why. One of his friends asked, "Didn't you say you didn't like Anna?" Ryan kept his head down, scrolling through his phone as he replied to my message. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's go to that Japanese place you love. When he looked up again, there was an uncontrollable smile at the corner of his eyes. Just because I don't like her, he said, doesn't mean we can't be together. Chapter 3. To Ryan, I had simply appeared along the path he'd already planned for his life. So he let me tag along for a while. It had nothing to do with love. And yet, after we got together, he was, by all accounts, a good boyfriend. He prepared surprises on anniversaries, and even when life got busy, he'd carve out an entire afternoon to make custom mugs with me at a pottery studio. One memory stood out the most. I was buried in editing my thesis and left him waiting on the street for 3 hours. When I finally arrived, flustered and apologizing, he just smiled and gently ruffled my hair, saying it was fine. To make it up to him, I took him out to an expensive restaurant. He didn't say much about it, and in the end, I discovered he had quietly paid the bill ahead of time. But ever since I overheard that conversation between him and his friends, something had been stuck in my heart. I kept a certain distance, never going further than kisses and hugs. Because that fragile relationship felt like a ticking time bomb, waiting for the right moment to be set off. Maybe it was the soft, intimate glow of that night. Or maybe it was the pressure of graduation looming over us. With alcohol warming my veins, I pushed him down. My kisses were clumsy and unplanned, moving from the tip of his nose to the curve of his throat. He bent slightly, steadying my waist. His brows drew together, holding back whatever he was feeling, his voice rough and unsteady. "Anna, do you even know what you're doing?" Under the warm yellow light, I braced myself against his solid chest, tracing slow circles over his tense skin, teasing. "Ryan, are you even real? You feel like a mannequin." He let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a groan, his lean frame shifting with quiet strength. In one smooth motion, he reversed our positions, pulling me into something far more intimate. His fingers, calloused just enough, slid along the back of my neck. The sensation was sharp, threaded with something dangerously close to pleasure. "Still think I'm not real?" He brushed a kiss over the tear marks on my face, his voice low, coaxing. Heat rushed to my face. I pulled away as if burned, letting go of him, a soft sound slipping from my throat. Chapter 4. After graduation, Ryan followed his advisor to a research lab in another city. He asked me whether we should go our separate ways or if I wanted to come with him. His expression was calm, like he was making an ordinary, practical decision. I chose the latter. I moved with him and built a life there. He took me home to meet his parents, and they started talking about an engagement. On our 5th anniversary, he came home holding a tiny white kitten with mismatched eyes and asked me to name it. "How about Machi?" I said, delighted, scooping it into my arms. Ryan didn't look at me, just played with the kitten's paws, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Your mom's a foodie. Every name she picks has something to do with food." He tapped the kitten lightly on the nose. "Machi, you'd better keep mom company and make her laugh. Don't let her get sad, or dad's cutting off your treats." I burst out laughing. "Ryan, are you serious? You're threatening a baby kitten?" At that, his gaze darkened as it settled on me. "I'm not always human," he said quietly. "Sometimes I'm a beast." Then he bent down and lifted me up, kitten and all, heading toward the bedroom. I tried to placate him. "I'm exhausted. Let's eat first." "When have you ever been the one doing the work?" "It's always me." He said it all without the slightest embarrassment, shamelessly teasing. I smacked him in annoyance, and he clutched his chest, pretending to be hurt, loudly insisting that I'd have to take responsibility for him for the rest of my life. Back then, I truly believed in the future we were building together. The little details I chose to ignore could still be glossed over, smoothed into something beautiful. But later, Machi died. She wasn't even 2 years old. In that moment, it felt like something inside me shattered. Chapter 5. I came back from a business trip. Machi didn't run up to greet me like she always did, weaving around my legs and begging for attention. When I tried to pick her up, she shrieked, scratched me, and bolted away. Ryan immediately grabbed my hand to check the wound and insisted on taking me to the hospital for a shot. He tried to reassure me, saying maybe I'd been gone too long and Machi just didn't recognize me anymore. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Machi had always been gentle, timid even. She would never scratch someone like that. I grabbed the cat's front right paw. There was no scar. This cat looked exactly like Machi. But it wasn't Machi. Ryan's expression flickered for a split second before he forced a smile and asked if I was remembering wrong. What he didn't know was that Machi had been injured because of me. One day, I'd taken her for a walk near our building when a dog lunged at me, tearing at my clothes. Machi had puffed up and charged forward. She clawed at the dog's face, blinding one eye, but was badly hurt in the process. Her front paw had nearly been torn off, hanging by skin and flesh. Even after it healed, the scar was impossible to miss. At the time, Ryan had just started a new project and was practically living at the lab for months. Even when he came home, he was in a rush. He hadn't noticed. And I hadn't told him. Under my relentless questioning, Ryan finally told me the truth. He'd been too busy to care for Machi, so he brought her to the lab to stay with him. A new junior researcher, not knowing any better, had used Machi as a test animal. He tried hard to defend her, saying it had been an accident. No one meant for it to happen. I looked at the man who called himself Machi's dad. I couldn't see any grief in his eyes. He used to pick out toys for that chubby little cat, going out of his way to make her happy. So why? Machi was dead. And I was the only one who seemed to care. Ryan and I had a huge fight. Or rather, I was the only one fighting. Compared to his calm, I looked like a hysterical mess. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight, trying to calm me down. It's just a cat, sweetheart. If you don't like this one, I'll get you another. To Ryan, a cat's purpose was companionship. Replaceable. He couldn't understand why I was so devastated. But Ryan, it wasn't the same. How could it be the same? Just like Ryan's wife. She had to be Anna. It couldn't be anyone else. Ryan said I was playing with words, being overly emotional, told me not to overthink it. He said we'd be fine. But I knew we wouldn't. The dream I had woven for myself had shattered, and reality made it painfully clear. The memories I had so carefully created weren't irreplaceable. They could be swapped out, just like everything else. All those years I spent chasing after him felt like a joke. His wife could be Anna. Or she could be anyone. Just like Machi, any cat could be Machi. Whoever stood in the position of a wife, he would treat her well. He was good to the role. Not to Anna. The hardest part was knowing this so clearly. He didn't love me that much. And I couldn't stop loving him. In this relationship, he always had the upper hand, because he had a way out. But I had thrown myself into it from the start, drawn in by his face, rushing toward him like a moth to a flame. I didn't even have the right to feel wronged. Chapter 6. I didn't want to see Ryan. Work became the perfect excuse. Working late into the night, I found myself thinking about Machi again. She used to sit by the front door, head tilted, ears perked, listening for my footsteps. Waiting for me to come home. Then she'd leap into my arms, meowing sweetly, demanding attention. When I brought out a new toy, her mismatched eyes would light up, and she'd let out soft little cries, begging me to play with her. The toys were still there. But she would never receive them again. 3 months into our one-sided Cold War, Ryan suggested we take a trip to fix things. Because of his job, he was always on call, so our past trips had all been nearby. This time, he took an extended leave. He wanted to take me somewhere far away, a city I'd always dreamed of visiting, over 1,000 miles from where we lived. It was peak travel season, and the trip had been planned on impulse. Flights were completely sold out. He managed to pull a favor and secure 2 last-minute train seats, separated by 2 cars. When we arrived at our destination, the train only stopped for a few minutes. Ryan got off. I didn't. Chapter 7. I had a fever. After leaving the station, I took a cab to a nearby hospital. The doctor said it was a weakened immune system from overwork. While I was hooked up to N4, I ran into one of Ryan's colleagues. More precisely, the new junior researcher he'd mentioned before, Chloe. When I asked how she recognized me, she explained that she'd seen my photo in Ryan's wallet. Chloe pressed her lips together, lowered her eyes, and apologized in a soft, earnest voice. I thought Machi was a lab animal. When I found out the truth, I wanted to stop the experiment. But the data was perfect. Ryan didn't want to waste it, so they continued. They followed up for 3 full phases to get the most accurate results. He even received an award for it. I guess you win some, you lose some. I stared at her, stunned. What did you just say? Chloe blinked innocently, then repeated with visible excitement. He got recognition for the research. They're even considering him for a promotion this year. She smiled at me sweetly. Anna, you should say a few good words for me in front of him. I'll be working under him from now on. I laughed. So that was it. Machi had been traded for his future. The room began to spin. I fainted. I dreamed of Machi convulsing, foam at her mouth. In her final moments, she was still waiting for her dad to realize she'd been switched. And Ryan was gently calling another cat Machi, stroking it affectionately. Beside him stood a woman labeled wife, a girl who looked vaguely like me. I jolted awake. Ryan was sitting at my bedside, watching me anxiously. You're awake. How do you feel? Does anything hurt? I cut him off coldly. Why didn't you stop the experiment? His hand, which had been reaching toward my forehead, froze midair. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and began opening a takeout container. You were unconscious for 3 days. You must be hungry. I brought your favorite rice porridge, he said. I even had them add shrimp. The doctor didn't know when you'd wake up, so I kept reheating it every few hours. He twisted off the lid, tested the temperature with a spoon, then held it out to me. It's just right now. He twisted open the lid, took a small taste, then held it out to me. It's perfect now. I slapped his hand away. The container crashed to the floor, spilling everywhere. Metal clanged against marble, the sharp, jarring sound slicing through the room. Ryan exhaled heavily and looked down at me. When I got the call, I came straight here. For 3 days, I didn't leave your side. I was afraid you'd hurt yourself, afraid something would happen. So, Anna. His voice hardened. The first thing you do after waking up is interrogate me about that damn animal? Hurt and anger flickered across his impossibly handsome face. I lifted my chin and met his eyes, my voice cool and edged with sarcasm. So you do get angry, Ryan. He gave a tight, humorless smile. As for Machi, I don't think I made the wrong decision. Her sacrifice meant something. Why can't you let it go? The complete absence of remorse in his expression scraped against my nerves. You're a selfish, self-righteous hypocrite, I shot back. Yeah, he said flatly. I'm the villain. And you, Anna, you're some kind of saint. But don't forget, you're the one who chased me. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Stuck to me like glue. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him, his laugh cold. What? Now you've seen my true colors and you regret it? Want to break up? You think you can come and go whenever you want? You think I'm going to cry and beg you to stay? Don't flatter yourself. There are plenty of girls around me who are prettier and more accomplished than you. And you? You're nothing. A chill spread through me. All the memories I had painstakingly built in my mind meant nothing to him. I had poured my heart out for someone who didn't value it. At a certain point, pain becomes so intense that it turns into clarity. Just leave, I said quietly. Let's not see each other again. Ryan froze for a second. His eyes darkened, and a trace of self-mockery curved his lips. He ran a hand through his hair, his voice low. You started this. You deal with it. If the engagement's off, you explain it to both families. I nodded. He turned and walked away slowly. In the past, the moment I saw him leave with even the slightest frown, I would have chased after him, wrapped my arms around him from behind, and coaxed him into forgiving me. But those gestures, those moments of intimacy, meant nothing to him. Cheap. Laughable. The doorknob finally turned. I called out to him. A soft scoff left my mouth. In the silence of the room, it sounded deafening. Ryan lifted his chin slightly and looked back at me, as if he had expected this. You're the one who likes rice porridge, I said evenly. After a pause, I added, I'm allergic to shrimp. His expression shifted in rapid succession, confusion, then panic, then a forced calm. He left in a hurry, his retreat far less composed than he would have liked. Chapter 8. When it came to calling off the engagement, I said I was going abroad to study. It was a flimsy excuse, but Ryan's parents didn't object. Before I left, his mother pulled me aside. Anna, I owe you an apology for that son of mine. Surprised, I watched as she pressed a bag into my hands. I know exactly what kind of person he is. He's been difficult since he was a kid. You're the only one who's ever tolerated him this long. If it were me, I'd have slapped some sense into him years ago. She sighed softly. I support you going overseas. And if you can, come visit us once in a while. No matter what happens between you and Ryan, I've always thought of you as my daughter. Hurry up. I don't have all day. Ryan stood a few feet away with his hands in his pockets, impatience written across his face. Once we got in the car, he started the engine without looking at me. If it weren't for my mom, I wouldn't be driving you. I didn't respond. I opened the bag. Inside were the cash and jewelry his family had given me over the years, things I'd already tried to give back. Altogether, they were worth a small fortune. Take these back, I said. Ryan glanced at the bag and tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I don't want anything you've touched. Bad luck. Ryan had a face that could stop people in their tracks, but there was something sharp and calculating beneath it. When he was in a good mood, he was charming, almost disarmingly so. But when he wasn't, a single offhand remark from him could leave you aching deep in your bones. I remembered one time when I ran into a former male classmate while waiting for Ryan to get the car from the garage. We exchanged a few polite words. The entire drive home, Ryan was silent, his jaw set. "What's wrong?" I asked carefully. "Do you fall in love with every guy you meet?" he said flatly, each word deliberate. "Anna, your love is pretty cheap." Back then, I swallowed the bitterness and told myself he was just jealous. That it meant he cared. That we loved each other. But love shouldn't make you feel small. Love shouldn't send you into a corner alone, tending to your own wounds in silence. I looked at the man beside me, years of memories surging through my chest, and the words slipped out before I could stop them. "Everything you're wearing, from head to toe, who bought it? Even your underwear. I picked those out. So why don't you think that's bad luck too?" Ryan's face darkened. I kept going, years of swallowed resentment pouring out at once. "I've slept with you too. So what, does that mean you should die for bad luck?" His teeth clenched. "Anna, watch yourself. You're in my car." "What? Are you going to dump me on the side of the road?" I straightened in my seat and shouted, "Pull over." Ryan's jaw tightened. He said nothing and slammed his foot on the gas. The sudden acceleration threw me back against the seat. I grabbed his arm instinctively, then let go. He shot me a glance before turning his eyes back to the road. When we reached my building, he stopped abruptly. I was shoved out with the bag still in my hands. I had barely found my footing when his car sped away. If nothing unexpected happened, that would be the last time we saw each other. Not exactly a graceful ending. I couldn't even name the feeling in my chest. The world is vast, but it only takes a little fate for two people to meet. And when that fate runs out, they become strangers again. Chapter 9. At dinner, my mom went into lecture mode. "It's not like he cheated or did anything unforgivable. I really don't understand what you're making such a big deal about." I didn't argue. To her, I was being dramatic. Immature. But only I knew what it felt like inside. I didn't want to live like that anymore, constantly compromising, constantly shrinking myself. Machi had just been the trigger. Somewhere along the way, I had lost myself in that relationship. And I couldn't accept the ending it led to. If a piece of meat is rotting, you cut it out before the smell spreads. "You finally come home for dinner, and this is how it goes," my dad muttered, trying to lighten the mood. "Lighten what?" my mom snapped. "She basically wasted years of her life." "Mom, what are you saying?" She slammed her chopsticks down. "Am I wrong? You threw everything away for that man. You changed your plans for college. You followed him to another city. Your father and I worked so hard to accept Ryan. He doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, has ambition, that's a good man. And now you're throwing it all away over something like this? Don't ruin your own life out of stubborn pride. The people closest to you always know exactly where it hurts the most." We parted on bad terms. Both my parents were teachers, raised in a traditional household. From what color clothes I wore to where I studied, or I'd live and work in the future. Even the kind of man I'd eventually marry, ideally someone in education. My life had been mapped out long before I understood it. And every time they believed something was right, I felt the urge to go the opposite way. I wanted to prove that my choices could be right too. That life didn't have to follow the path they laid out for me. So I worked for what I chose. And, to be fair, those choices had always paid off. I grew proud, even a little arrogant, thinking love would be the same. That as long as I followed my heart, things would fall into place. But when it came to Ryan, I lost. And I accepted it. Tears slid down my cheeks, cold against my skin, and somehow I found myself smiling. I was still young. I could start over. Life allowed more room for mistakes than I had ever imagined. I couldn't let one wrong choice define everything, couldn't give up fighting for myself. Chapter 10. Late that night, I knocked on my mom's door. I knew she wasn't asleep. When parents love their children, they plan for the long road ahead. They walked their path, and it worked for them. So they paved one for me, hoping I'd stumble less. That was all. She sat at the edge of the bed, wearing her reading glasses, working on an old cross-stitch pattern. It was something she did to calm her insomnia. A warm bedside lamp cast soft light across the room, catching the strands of gray at her temples, marking the passage of time. She glanced at me but didn't speak, continuing her stitching. I walked over and hugged her from behind, resting my forehead lightly against her shoulder. "Mom," I said softly, almost like I was a child again. She ignored me. I pressed on. "Mom. Don't call me that. I'm old. I can't control you anymore." She still didn't look at me. "But I want to see the world," I said softly. "And I want to see it with you and Dad." Maybe there was too much emotion in my voice. She finally paused. "What's there to see?" she muttered. "Your father and I are practically halfway to the grave. We just wanted you to settle down with Ryan. If you had a stable marriage, we'd feel like we'd done our job." I pulled back, frowning. "Who decided that's the job?" "Mom, life is long, long enough to shrink into nothing but routines, eating and sleeping. But it's also short. We only get one shot at this. Shouldn't we travel? Shouldn't we enjoy it?" She adjusted her glasses. "Where do you learn all this nonsense?" I hugged her tighter, leaning into her shoulder. "From you. You're the most respected English teacher in town, remember?" She laughed, the lines at the corners of her eyes deepening. And then she started crying. "When your father and I are gone, what are you going to do by yourself?" I swallowed the tears rising in my throat. "I'm grown up. I can take care of myself. You couldn't even be nice to me all the time when I was a kid, how can you expect someone else to always treat me well? I still remember when I snuck off to swim in that creek and you chased me home with a switch. You weren't exactly gentle." She set the cross-stitch aside and hugged me back, as if she had finally accepted that things between Ryan and me were truly over. After a long sigh, she said, "Fine. As long as you're safe and healthy." My dad, woken by the noise, poked his head in. When he saw us, his face softened. "You two barely ate dinner. You must be hungry. I'll make something." My mom wiped her eyes and called after him, "Poach a couple of eggs too." In that small room, the three of us ended up laughing together. The next morning, my mom woke me up by waving a thick stack of photos in front of my face. "Your aunt introduced you to some very promising single men. Take a look." I rolled over with a groan. So much for last night's breakthrough. Chapter 11. The days that followed were exhausting but full. I attended prep courses, and in between, I scrambled to handle paperwork and visa applications. Every now and then, I still had to show up for the blind dates my mom arranged. Her logic was simple, just think of it as making friends. You can never have too many. So I went. The man across from me was gentle and composed, courteous without trying too hard, nothing like the overconfident, greasy types I'd met before. But I had just come out of a 6-year relationship. I wasn't ready to step into another one. So I politely turned down his suggestion that we meet again. When it came to Ryan, I realized I hadn't thought about him in a long time. Maybe forgetting someone wasn't as hard as I'd imagined. I hadn't meant to remember him. But he stepped back into my life anyway. Ryan and Chloe appeared suddenly within my line of sight. From where I sat, they were standing close together. Ryan leaned down, saying something to her, his brows soft, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He leaned down to say something to her, his expression soft, almost gentle. As if sensing my gaze, Ryan looked in my direction. I lowered my head and turned away. I hoped he hadn't noticed me. A moment later, I looked up again. They had already taken their seats. Ryan had his back to me, chatting easily with Chloe, laughter passing between them. "Go your separate ways, or come with me to the city." His words from long ago echoed in my mind. We were in the same restaurant now, only a few yards apart, separated by a sea of voices and clinking glasses. This was what going our separate ways looked like. My date noticed my distraction and suggested we end the dinner early. Outside the restaurant, I stood at the curb waiting for a ride. A car beside me suddenly turned on its headlights. I raised a hand to block the harsh white glare. When my eyes adjusted, I saw the person behind the wheel. Ryan. He, who never smoked, now held a half-finished cigarette between his fingers, his gaze dark. We stared at each other in silence. He spoke first. "That guy just now, your new boyfriend?" Chapter 12. That's none of your business. Ryan didn't react, just lowered his eyes and flicked ash from his cigarette before asking, almost casually. "Did you report me?" I froze. As if my silence confirmed his suspicion, Ryan let out a low chuckle and nodded. Using stray animals for research isn't unusual. Reporting me for that won't do anything. If you really wanted to hurt me, you should have reported me for cheating. That would have sounded more convincing. He paused, then added flatly. But it wouldn't hold up. Because from the beginning to the end, Anna, you were the only one I ever had. Seeing that I wasn't responding, he let out a few short laughs. I'm with Chloe now. She's great. Not dramatic. Not exhausting. I smiled back. Congratulations. His eyes darkened as he studied my face, as if searching for a crack. I had expected the outcome regarding the lab's use of stray animals. I'd consulted professionals. At most, it would attract public attention. But public attention had weight. Even an internal reprimand for letting personal matters interfere with work would count. He needed to face consequences for what happened to Machi. So I filed a formal complaint with the university's ethics committee. People get what's coming to them, I said calmly. Sometimes it just takes time. Ryan exhaled a slow ring of smoke and laughed louder. Anna, I don't know whether to call you naive or stupid. Karma is something powerless people cling to for comfort. A streak of lightning tore across the sky. It was about to rain. I instinctively stepped farther away from him, as if distance alone could keep me from being struck. You should go, I said lightly. It's going to storm. He ignored me, stepped out of the car, and walked toward me as if continuing a conversation we were still having. You used to talk about this place all the time. Said the food was good. So I tried it. It's spicy. I coughed a few times, but I can handle it. Ryan couldn't tolerate spice at all. Even mild heat would leave him with a stomachache that kept him up all night. Because I loved spicy food, I had gradually switched to his bland diet over the years. So hearing him say he could handle it surprised me. Maybe that was Chloe's influence. When I still didn't reply, he opened the passenger door. I'll drive you. I already called a car. He hesitated. Can't we at least be friends? Under the weight of his searching gaze, I nodded slowly. No. He leaned back slightly, a bitter smile tugging at his mouth. I still can't believe this is where we ended up. Over a cat. The first time you ever gave me attitude. The first time you ignored me. The first time you fought with me. In your heart, was I really worth less than a cat? And I was the one who brought it home. Yes, I did this to myself. I paused, a dull ache spreading through my chest. Ryan, I said quietly, not fighting is what's truly scary. We're human. We feel everything, joy, anger, sorrow, desire. But I never dared to show him my dissatisfaction. Never dared to lose my temper with him. Because I knew he would be the first to let go. Even when we were at the height of being inseparable, he could still ask me calmly. Should we go our separate ways, or should I follow him to the city? In the future he planned, I was never part of it. This relationship existed because I held on to it with everything I had. The moment I let go, there would be nothing left. You knew replacing Machi with a similar-looking cat would hurt me. But you still chose your work. You chose to sacrifice her. You also knew I wouldn't make a scene. Because I loved you the most. My feelings, my choices, my thoughts, they never really mattered. Ryan, when I realized that, I didn't stop loving you. I just chose to love myself instead. Chapter 13. I didn't. Ryan stepped forward and grabbed my wrist, as if trying to explain something. But in the end, nothing came out. My ride arrived. I motioned for him to let go. His eyes were red, his voice earnest, almost pleading. Anna, I'll change. I'll fix everything. Come back. We'll go back to how we were. If you're angry, hit me. Take it out on me. Being with Chloe. I said that out of spite. I've missed you these past few days. I really have. More than anything. Under his desperate gaze, I met his eyes and said, cold and steady, each word deliberate. But Ryan. I don't love you anymore. He froze, shock and disbelief flooding his face. The words hit him harder than anything else. Even as I got into the car, he remained standing there, motionless. The sky opened up as if on cue, rain crashing down, drumming heavily against the roof. As the car pulled away, his figure remained in the distance, blurred behind the curtain of rain. The headlights stretched his shadow long and thin, until it disappeared. That your boyfriend? The driver asked. I blinked, then realized she was the same woman from the train, the one who had poured me a cup of water. I smiled and corrected her. Ex-boyfriend. She glanced at me in the mirror. He cheated? I thought about it. At least while we were together, he hadn't crossed that line. When I shook my head, she sighed. I've been with my husband since I was 18. Had 2 kids with him. We've been married over a decade. He treats me well. Hands over his whole paycheck. As she talked, a faint light flickered in her eyes. I was about to offer a polite congratulations when she added. But he keeps another woman on the side. I went still. She let out a helpless sigh. When I was younger, I would have fought about it. Now the kids are grown. You learn to live with things. Men are like that. As long as they don't completely abandon the family, life goes on. She said it lightly, almost casually. But all I saw was a middle-aged woman who had given up parts of herself for her family, comforting herself with what was left. Isn't loyalty the most basic requirement in a partner? I said quietly. When did that become a bonus instead of the bare minimum? If there's a tumor growing inside you, and you don't cut it out in time, before it spreads beyond saving, even if you can't walk away unscathed, you still fight to remove it. My words seemed to startle her. Love shouldn't mean endless compromise or losing your dignity. Love should mean standing beside each other, moving forward together, growing. Chapter 14. Ryan didn't go back to the city. Instead, he kept appearing wherever I was. On the road to my prep classes. Near my neighborhood. He wore the clothes I had bought him and greeted me like nothing had happened. I ignored him. He only smiled and let it go. Like he was acting out some grand redemption arc. I bet his patience wouldn't last a month. But he spoke with quiet certainty. Just wait. I'll prove how serious I am. The scene felt strangely familiar, but I didn't dwell on it. Later, I found out from my mom that he had bought a place across the street from ours and planned to stay. She only learned because our dishwasher broke. She was about to call someone when Ryan showed up and fixed it himself. Not just the dishwasher, she added proudly. Light bulbs, that cabinet we needed painted, he did all of it. Mom, I said, he and I have nothing to do with each other anymore. I was afraid she might still be hoping we'd get back together. She snorted. So what? He hurt my daughter. He deserves it. Thanks to Ryan, she stopped arranging blind dates for me. Instead, she found new ways to torment him every day, throwing rotten eggs at his door, dumping trash outside his place. She meant to drive him away. But day after day, Ryan stayed. One day, I finally couldn't take it anymore. I asked him to meet. Ryan showed up dressed to the nines, tailored suit, polished shoes, a massive bouquet of red roses in his arms. At a street-side barbecue joint. I stared at him, speechless. People around us paused mid-bite, giving him strange looks. Ryan ignored them. The joy in his eyes was impossible to hide as he walked toward me. Anna, you finally agreed to see me. I let out a tired sigh. Do you really think this is funny? What are you doing? A flicker of disappointment crossed his face, but he forced a smile. Anna, this time. I'm the one running toward you without hesitation. I lost my patience. I grabbed the bouquet he shoved into my arms and threw it straight at his face. The thorns scraped his skin, leaving thin red lines across his handsome features. He didn't seem to care. His smile looked worse than crying. Humble. Desperate. Stripped of all dignity. Ryan, listen carefully. Anna, don't love you anymore. His eyes reddened. He grabbed my shoulders, shaking his head frantically. You're lying. I met his gaze, my voice sharp as a blade. I don't just not love you. I dislike you. Before I could finish, he lunged forward and kissed me, cutting off my words. He pinned my hands, holding me in place. His lips forced mine open, familiar, practiced, as he closed his eyes and lost himself in the moment. I bared my teeth and bit down hard. The metallic taste of blood spread quickly across my tongue. He didn't pull away. Not until the driver from that day happened to pass by. She grabbed a security baton and rushed over, pinning him to the ground. Then spat in disgust. Trash. Chapter 15. Ryan was held for 2 weeks on charges of sexual assault. When he was released, the driver clasped my hands, smiling brightly. Thank you, sweetheart. You woke me up. I divorced my husband. It's time I live for myself. We looked at each other and laughed in the dark, celebrating in our own quiet way. When Ryan's parents heard what had happened, they rushed over from the city. I thought they came because of him. Until I saw them standing outside my door, arms full of bags. Some were gifts for my parents. The rest were their luggage. Ryan's mom took my hand, her smile warm. Anna, your uncle and I have never been abroad. Now that we're retired, all we do is take walks and pass the time. It gets a little boring. Ryan's mom glanced at her husband, then leaned close and whispered to me, "Do you think the old men overseas are handsome?" Right. This trip was clearly about me. So I took 4 people abroad. I went to study. They went to explore. The 4 of us even had enough people to sit down and play cards together. One evening, I took them to dinner at a seaside restaurant. On my way to the restroom, I overheard Ryan's mom on the phone. I'm not one to eavesdrop. I was about to walk away. Until I heard her snap into the receiver. I know. How many times do you need to say it? I'll keep an eye on your girl. You just worry about getting through your time in lockup. I quietly left. After dinner, just as we stepped out of the restaurant, she grabbed my arm and shouted excitedly. Sweetheart. Look. Look over there. I followed her gaze. A tall, blonde, blue-eyed man stood near the entrance. Now that's handsome. He looks like a young Leonardo DiCaprio. I want that one as my son-in-law.
Ryan, side story. Chapter 1. I was born into abundance. Not just good looks, I had a wealthy father. My mother was a beautiful salesgirl. My face came from her. There were rumors that she didn't marry my father for love, but for money. At first, I argued against it. Eventually, I accepted it as truth. Growing up, everyone around me, classmates, teachers, even school administrators, treated me with exceptional kindness. After earning my trust, they showed their real intentions. They wanted access to my father. Connections. Favors. Influence. That was all. My world began to crumble. Friendship was fake. Family was fake. Love was fake. Everything was fake. Chapter 2. I became rebellious. After kicking down the principal's office door for what felt like the 100th time, my parents sent me far away to a small-town high school nowhere near the city. No one there knew who I was. Teachers and classmates treated me like anyone else, indifferent, even dismissive. Except for a few girls who stared at my face like I was something out of a magazine. But mostly, no one cared. They were busy with their own lives. They had dreams. Plans. They believed that if they worked hard enough, they'd make it. I found their optimism almost laughable. If you were willing to swallow your pride and flatter the right person, you could get further than hard work ever would. My deskmate was a skinny guy with dark skin and thick glasses. He used to sigh and say, "I'm jealous of you, Ryan." I'd be playing on my handheld console, raising an eyebrow. Guys like me, average looking, we have to stay at the top of the class just to get noticed. To get girls to like us. Me? Look at you. Your grades suck, but you look like that Korean actor, what's his name? Cha something. With a face like that, you'll never run out of girls. Letters. Gifts. Attention. I laughed, but something inside me stirred. I wanted to prove that there was more to me than my background. More than my face. I wanted to be liked for something I earned. And I did it. Teachers started noticing me. After every mock exam, their eyes held something different when they looked at me: expectation, approval, even pride. The girls' stares changed too. They still admired how I looked. But now there was something else in their gaze: respect. That was mine. Not something handed to me because of my father's name. Not something borrowed from the accident of my face. Chapter 3. I met Anna in my sophomore year. She had fair skin and 2 dimples that showed when she smiled. Not stunning. But fresh. Bright. Like sunlight. She was like the other girls at first. Water bottles. Gifts. Letters. I rejected her more than once. Eventually, I stopped bothering. Plenty of people chased me. Very few lasted. Most people don't enjoy pressing their warm faces against a cold shoulder. But Anna stayed. She had this endless stubborn energy, like a small sun that refused to burn out. She would grin at me and say, "Hi, Ryan. My name's Anna." Eventually, there were days when I didn't see her at all. and I'd feel it, this strange hollowness in my chest. I'd drift off in class without meaning to. I would shake the thought away, almost angrily. She was like everyone else. She just liked my face. Don't hand your heart over so easily. Hadn't I learned that lesson once already? Falling into that kind of abyss once in childhood had been more than enough. Chapter 4. I decided to say yes to Anna in my freshman year of college. She showed up wearing this awkward yellow dress and makeup that was, honestly, terrible. Her eyebrows were thick and uneven. The blush on her cheeks was so heavy it looked like she'd been slapped. For a second, I didn't even recognize her. If it weren't for her voice, I might not have. I teased her, half disgusted, but my heart was pounding. From shock. Thankfully, she talked nonstop, covering the sound of it. I was old enough to date. What was the harm in trying? That's how I convinced myself. I figured it wouldn't last 3 months. We ended up together for 4 years. Being with Anna was easy. Comfortable. She never lashed out at me. Never picked fights. If I liked something, she liked it too. Food. Lifestyle. Habits. She adjusted effortlessly. I grew used to her enthusiasm. Her warmth. The way she clung to me. The year we graduated, I gave her 2 options. Break up or come with me. If she chose to follow me, I would marry her. When I asked that question, I was nervous. Just a little. But I never showed weakness. I was used to standing above others. Used to observing from a distance. Used to not needing anyone. Anna didn't hesitate. She chose to stay. And I let out a quiet breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Chapter 5. I never expected Anna would leave me over a cat. What happened to Machi was an accident. Or maybe it was Chloe, hitting back at me for rejecting her. But once the damage was done, Machi would have spent the rest of her life sick and in pain. Ending it quickly while completing the experiment felt like the most rational decision. Efficient. Clean. After everything came to light, Anna left without hesitation. And I didn't try to stop her. I accepted an invitation to drink with some old friends, and they were stunned to see me show up. I used to avoid them. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. Habits like that felt destructive, numbing, too easy a way to lose control. Pointless. Performative. I preferred the lab. Numbers. Data. Results. Things that were real. Measurable. But that night, I wanted to get drunk. Not for any noble reason. I wanted to celebrate the fact that Anna had finally dropped the act. She was just like everyone else, she'd come to me with a purpose. The only consolation was that I'd never truly given her my heart. "Ryan, do you know what you look like right now?" one of them said, half amused. "What?" I exhaled a slow stream of smoke. Like someone in denial. Like you just had your defenses shattered and you're pretending it doesn't hurt. You fell for her. I frowned, rejecting the idea immediately. No way. I should be relieved. Women like that are all the same, smooth talkers. They reel you in, and stop caring. They come and go whenever they want. What did she take me for? I slammed my glass onto the table, frustration bleeding through every word. Old nightmares crept back in. A voice inside my head kept whispering. Pathetic. She never loved you. See? In her heart, you're worth less than a cat. You lost again. Fooled into giving away your heart. Chapter 6. What gave Anna the right to walk away so cleanly, so decisively? Was I really worth less than a cat to her? I kept testing her, pushing, until she finally admitted it herself. She loved me. And she loved herself. Those 2 things were never in conflict. So I tore off every mask, lowered every guard. I told her how I felt openly, honestly. If she would just come back, I would do anything. But she only said, "I don't love you anymore." Cold. Final. That day, I stood in the pouring rain until I was soaked through. Then I got sick. In my fever, I kept calling her name, my voice hoarse. But no one came running anxiously to my bedside. No one leaned down to kiss my forehead. I had wronged her. I had drained her love dry. She didn't love me anymore. Once I accepted that truth, all the details I had deliberately ignored before turned into blades, stabbing back at me. The pain was suffocating. Crushing. My mother called me arrogant. Hypocritical. Said I'd taken other people's unconditional devotion for granted. And this was what I deserved. For the first time, I didn't argue. Instead, I asked her, "Do you love Dad?" She paused. Then her eyes softened, her expression drifting into memory. She spoke about the fragments of her life. A lifetime of chasing ideas, opening shops, making investments, none of them ever really successful. But she never lost her passion. Because she knew that every time she turned around, her husband's gaze would still be steady, sincere, unwavering. In their spare time, they would talk about dreams, about the past. Even about me, their rebellious son, and what road I might take one day. Life is long. Stepping away from the vanity and noise of the world might not be a bad thing. Whenever storms approached, my mother would worry about my father's injured knee. She'd warm towels, massage the joint, ease his pain. Never once saying the word love. But love was everywhere. Outside the window, vast wheat fields rolled by in the morning light, waves rising in the breeze. Love is response. Something you can see. Something you can touch. I tried to walk the road Anna once walked. Only then did I understand the bitterness and hurt she had carried all along. After submitting my resignation, Chloe's expression was complicated. She was glad she no longer had competition for the year-end promotion. But the lab had just recruited several new, highly capable junior researchers. On my last day, I accidentally saw Chloe locked in a passionate kiss with the project lead. If I remembered correctly, he had a wife and children. But none of that concerned me anymore. I looked up at the clear blue sky. My dear Anna. This time, I'll be the one running toward you without hesitation.
At this point, my love life is a public service announcement. Free of charge.